Hi, welcome to our first Friday series of watch parties about all things Belle Isle and the Detroit River, especially as they relate to the greater Great Lakes. I'm Sandra Swoboda, the Program Director of Great Lakes Now, and I'm so happy to be able to talk about some of my favorite topics and places with all of you today, and with my good friend Anna Marie Seisling from WDET, Detroit Public Radio. Hi, Anna.
Hey everyone, and hey Sandra. Yeah, we have had some really great text threads in the last few weeks. We've been sending each other pictures of our Detroit River adventures, and even in the winter, it's really great to see that we're both getting out there. Even though it's cold and it can be hard in the winter, but it's really important to get out there, bundle up, and go. So, Sandra, what are some of the outdoor things that you've been doing?
Right? Yay, us. Let me get my parka, my winter hat. We have been taking our dog, of course, on a lot of hikes at Rouge Park, which is also in Detroit. It's named after the Rouge River, which runs right through the park. It's a waterway that's going to figure into this watch party with our topic of coastal wetlands. We also head out with the dog, of course, to Belle Isle as much as possible. In fact, today, I'm hoping to join some friends there after this watch party, despite how cold it is now.
Perfect. That is so great. So you're kind of living your work, and I really relate to that too. It's been fun. And, I hope our audience here knows the Belle Isle Conservancy is a co-sponsor of our watch party, and we're so grateful for that.
Yeah, we get to live our work, as you said. I think it counts as work time every time I go out to Belle Isle. Even with my dog, I think, I can count that as work. Oh, yeah, there is my dog keeping an eye on the koi pond.
Looking hungry too. Geez.
I swear he did not eat any of those kois, but I did tell him that those goldfish are an invasive species around the Great Lakes. We've talked about goldfish in a couple of our previous watch parties. So, I hope that people can go back and watch that. Actually, we'll put the link in the chat there. So, Anna, though, as funny as that picture is, like, you have won the unofficial competition for pictures and text threads of Belle Isle. So let me see if we can get a little video you shot. Zach, our technical producer, can put that up. Anna very meanly texted that to me the other day of a sight she saw in the river. Well, so Anna, make us jealous. Talk about this.
Yeah, it was really crazy. So it was one of those days I'm sure so many of us can relate to, working from home, hadn't left the living room like all day. And finally, around 6 or so, my partner and I were like, we got to get some fresh air and get out of here. So we went to Belle Isle, checked out the ice. It was a beautiful day. All of a sudden, I see this like brown blob, and I'm like, what is that? And lo and behold, it's two bald eagles. And, I had seen bald eagles on Belle Isle many times, but never on a big ice floe like that. It was such a cool, again, just made me so happy that I did bundle up, went out there, and weathered and toughed out the winter weather so I could see those guys.
Looking at the Detroit River, the connector waterway as part of the Great Lakes. After you sent me that, we headed out the next day around sunset, and I hoped to replicate that, which I did not. But I did get this photo of my dog in front of one of my favorite places on the island. So Zach, can we show? There he is, the Belle Isle Aquarium. Well, of course, the Belle Isle Aquarium there is part of the Belle Isle Conservancy, which is a partner here in this series of watch parties on First Fridays.
That's right. We also have a pretty exciting new co-host for this watch party. A big warm welcome to the International Institute for Sustainable Development and their experimental lake area. So they're based in Canada, and they are a new co-host for this watch party series. Sandra, you've been there. Why are they such a great fit and a good partner for this?
Well, first of all, the experimental lakes area is totally amazing. It's a series of inland lakes in the remote wilderness of Canada where scientists do research on those lakes. Since it's a closed system, they can actually do experiments in the live environment, the real environment, and see the impact of things like climate change, like algal blooms, like even oil spills that they've replicated. So they have scientists on staff, and they do research in a lot of the areas that we talk about. So we thought it would be fun in the future to have some of their scientists on to talk about some of these issues that we are talking about as related to Belle Isle and the Detroit River, and today Lake St. Clair and the Rouge River as well.
Amazing. It sounds like it's going to be a great fit. I'm excited. So as our Facebook audience knows, thank you all so much for viewing. I really love these watch parties because it gives us a really real live time opportunity to loop you in and bring you into the conversation to answer your questions, hear what you are thinking about and seeing and experiencing when it comes to wetlands in the Great Lakes region. So if you do have a question or something that you want us to bring up during the conversation today, please leave that comment or question in the chat in the watch party on Facebook.
Yes, and as you, our loyal audience, know, you don't just get to ask questions of Anna or me, you get to ask from our guests, who are the experts. So today's guest I want to get to now. Her name is Marie McCormick, and she is the Executive Director of Friends of the Rouge. Marie, welcome to the Great Lakes Now, WDET, Belle Isle Conservancy, and now Friends of the Rouge Watch Party.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to chat, answer questions from both of you and from the audience. So thanks so much for having me.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Marie. So, well, you've been kind of patiently waiting while Sandy and I have been sharing our wintertime adventures. So now I want to introduce you to the audience a little bit. So for people who might not be familiar with your organization, what is Friends of the Rouge? Your name refers to the Rouge River, right?
Yeah, you got it. So we are a nonprofit organization that was started in 1986. We started as a grassroots group that was really interested in cleaning up the Rouge River. So Rescue the Rouge so it started in 1986, but there was an organization that started in 1970 in response to Earth Day. It was just cleaning up the river. So our organization has grown over the last 3.5 decades, 35 years this year, to include stewardship, education, monitoring, river access. We do all the fun things that bring people to the river and get them to know a little bit about the river and ways they can steward it in their own backyard.
Tell us a little more about the Rouge River. I think we have a map and we can kind of do a locator of where it's positioned. And then I'm going to ask you to talk about not only the Rouge, but like how you're connected to Detroit River and the Belle Isle Conservancy, because as you know, they're a co-sponsor of this event.
Sure, if you want to pull up that map, I'd be happy to chat about it. So the Rouge River watershed is a basin where all the water flows to a low point. In this case, it's the Rouge River. It's a 467 square mile river. We serve 48 communities, including a large section of Detroit. And we are one of the largest tributaries to the Detroit River. I believe adding at least 50% base flow to the river at that point. And in regards to our participation in the Detroit River Coalition, so back in 2019, a number of river-facing organizations, both on the US side and Ontario side, all came together to promote some conservation issues around the diverse natural and cultural heritage of the Detroit River from sort of a bi-national perspective. And Friends of the Rouge is involved because of that, the size of our tributary. But we, in 2019, came together around the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and we intended to do this like giant cleanup across the whole like area. Well, of course, best laid plans, COVID hit, and just before Earth Day, we had to scrap that planning. We did pivot to a hashtag campaign, which is called the Earth Day Pledge, where you swapped an everyday item to something more sustainable, like a plastic straw to a metal straw, for example. But this year, they're doing a comprehensive strategic planning process, of which Friends of the Rouge is playing a role in. It's being led by the Belle Isle Conservancy. Yeah, we're going to do some events this year, maybe a couple of sites near Fort Street Bridge Park. If anyone listening is familiar with that project in Southwest Detroit, doing some blight removal and trash removal and things like that. So we're really excited to be part of that coalition. I think it's really important to not just look at the U.S. side, but also kind of looking at it in a bi-national perspective. So we're pleased to be part of that work.
Yeah. Well, great chatting. I always learn a lot when we do these watch parties, and we are actually going to have an announcement related to the cleanup days in the next couple of weeks about a new project and participation and partnership we have going. But I want to get back to the title of our watch party today, which is about coastal wetlands. So Marie, can you tell us about coastal coastal wetlands? Marie, what can you tell us about coastal wetlands in general and then specific to the Rouge River?
Okay, so wetlands are the place where water kind of covers the soil or is present at either or near the surface of the soil for varying periods of time in the year. That might include the growing season. So the water saturation level determines how the soil develops and the types of plants and animals that you find living there. So wetlands support both aquatic and terrestrial species, and the prolonged presence of water creates conditions that favor the growth of specially adapted plants and kind of create the characteristics of wetland soils. So there's several different types of categories of wetlands. So you have coastal wetlands or tidal wetlands where like the sea mixes with the freshwater, kind of think of the Everglades, or like the Great Lakes coastal wetlands where the areas are directly influenced by one of the Great Lakes for the connecting channels like the Detroit River. And then the Rouge is kind of like an inland or non-tidal wetland. And that is like wetlands that are isolated, depressions. So you might see them on the edges of rivers. We call it kind of like riparian wetlands. So that can include like marshes, bogs, wet meadows, things like that. And they're very diverse and varying. But wetlands are the most productive ecosystems in the world. They're really compared to rainforests and coral reefs. And so although only 5% of the surface in the US is wetlands, they contain over 31% of all plant species and support 43+% of federally listed endangered or threatened species. They're rich habitat for amphibians and a large majority of the birds. So, and they, besides just being these amazing habitats, they provide something that's really beneficial to humans, which is flood control. They help clean water. They help provide houses and homes for wildlife. And unfortunately, Michigan has lost over 60% of its wetlands. And in Wayne County, where the Rouge really sits, over 90% of our wetlands are gone. That's a huge loss. And so I can talk more about wetlands if you're interested in questions, but they play such an important role in the health of our watershed. And I'll leave you with this. Wetlands are like the kidneys of our ecosystems. And if you had both of your kidneys removed, you wouldn't be doing so well.
Wow. Wow. All right. Leaving it there. I'll trying to think about kidneys in terms of the kind of like ecosystem anatomy of this region. That's so interesting. So I'm also thinking, I mean, mentioning wildlife, there are also some really significant man-made structures along the Rouge. One of those is, of course, Fairlane. That was Henry and Clara Ford's house. So what's going on the Rouge River around that area? How are we seeing the development kind of play out there?
Well, thanks for asking. That's such an interesting, awesome project that was funded through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And so the project is complete. It was over a $2 million project, and it was managed by Wayne County. So the idea was to circumnavigate the existing historical dam to create an over 800-foot fish ladder or passageway that kind of circumnavigates around. That is actually the Oxbow right there. But the fish ladder is it's a project that was identified by the Rouge River Advisory Council as a critical step in eliminating some of the environmental impacts, impairments that were identified in as an area of concern. So it's the dam itself is a Fairlane National Historic Landmark, and so they didn't want to dismantle it. So instead, to kind of fix the problem of fish not being able to migrate upstream, they did this fish passage. So it basically helps reconnect 50 miles of the Rouge River and over 108 tributary miles to the Great Lakes. So fish can get back up into the Rouge for the first time in over 100 years. Very cool project. And I will say, so the project is there, but the folks who run it are very want to pass the message along that during the time the vegetation, which is critical to the project developing, please stay out of that area. when there's when you're able to get into the area, they will let you know. It's a really nice area, kind of in a, behind Andiamo's and Dearborn. And so any foot bicycle traffic can really cause degradation to the area and impede the natural restoration. And so we really ask people to be respectful of the habitat and do not enter the project area. So,
got it.
Yeah. Anna, you actually did a story this week on another Ford site in the Metro Detroit area that has a restoration project going on as well. I know we have the webpage version of your story, but people can go there and listen. Can you tell us about that story and what that project is about?
Sure. So that's actually, I have to admit, selfishly, that is why I asked you, Marie, about what we were seeing at Fairlane on the Rouge. Yeah. So I spoke with Kevin Drodos, who is an invasive specialist with Ford House. He told me that along Lake St. Clair and Grosse Pointe Shores, they actually have this kind of rare situation there, which is that they are in possession of like a full continuous mile of shoreline there. And they got funding, so they are going to be kind of launching this preliminary study that's going to allow them to really figure out what it would mean to get rid of that hardened shoreline, remove that crushed concrete, and create something that is kind of like rewilding that area of the Lake St. Clair shoreline, which is pretty exciting to hear. You know, it's not, like Marie said, not just the shoreline itself, but also creating these kind of wetland areas too. And the hope is that it's going to be really beneficial for local wildlife there.
Interesting. Well, I'll be following that project as it goes along with all of these on the Rouge River as well, aiming at some habitat restoration that we can all experience from the water. So Marie, you've been working on some programs there at Friends of the Rouge that have helped people get out and see the projects right from the river in kayaks. So can you tell us a little bit about that project and that event? And we have some video from those as well. We'll ask you to narrate a little bit.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. So in 2020, something happened and we weren't able to host a traditional Rouge Uncruise, which we normally do, which takes people in the Diamond Jack up the Rouge River. It's normally narrated by either Dr. Oren Gelderloos or Dr. Paul Draus. And we really wanted to honor the spirit of that event. And so we created a 5-part Rouge Uncruise series, which takes you on a journey starting at the mouth of the Rouge River at Zug Island, going up. Each segment kind of hits a different piece of the river, and it ends at the Henry Ford Fairlane estate, which we just sort of talked about a little bit. Yeah, if you want to check it out, you can go to our website. You can check out our YouTube channel. And I mean, it's 7 hours of content. If you want to sit down and really learn about the Rouge, this is content for you. And you can see right here on the right, that's a natural sulfur spring. This is on Zug Island. It's remarkable that this has continued to exist, but it is a natural feature that is a really cool and interesting point of interest on this trail. So, and then this part right here you see is the Hubbell Southfield combined sewer outfall. This is, I believe at one point it was, but I believe it still is the largest combined sewer outfall in the world. It's very successful in managing combined sewer outfall, so raw sewage discharging into the Rouge. And it was a very expensive project, a great infrastructure project that was funded through the Rouge River Wet Weather National Demonstration Project that was ushered in part through the late John D. Dingle, who was very instrumental in bringing dollars to restore the Rouge and some of the Great Lakes region.
Okay. So cool to kind of get that kayak perspective, especially right now being in, the middle of winter. Nice to see blue skies and remember that things will thaw. So Marie, as the executive director of Friends of the Rouge, I'm wondering, how do you work to help people in kind of understanding this deeper relationship between wetlands and a healthy environment? Like you said earlier, so rainforest, coral reefs, I mean, these are really kind of classically beautiful natural landscapes. Wetlands, I think a lot of people look at them and kind of think, ugh. So I'm wondering, how do you kind of communicate the importance of wetlands and get people excited about them and understanding all that they offer, especially on the Rouge River?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that the work that we do really helps bring people into the fold. We have easy entry points for engagement, and we feel that bringing people to the river and experiencing it is going to develop a sense of love, a sense of sort of place that just hearing about it or like seeing a picture of it isn't going to do the same for you. So one way you can get involved with Friends of the Rouge and kind of develop that deeper sense of place for the Rouge is to participate in our Frog and Toad survey, where we teach you the sounds of frog and toads that you can find in the Rouge. And actually, we teach you all the sounds of all the frog and toads that you can find in the entire state of Michigan. And frogs are kind of like these little sensitive biological indicators. When you hear certain frogs, you know that a habitat that you're in is really healthy. Mm. So we have our first part available for free on a Zoom event on Saturday, February 20th. And then we have the second part, which, so the first part's an intro, and the second part is like really teaching you how to do the survey. But we have hundreds of people that participate, and even people outside of the Rouge watershed who are really interested in learning about frogs and toads. And to be quite honest, that's one of our, we call it our gateway projects. Mm-hmm. So people get interested in frog and toads. It's something you can do with your family, socially distanced. You go out at dusk and you listen for the presence and absence of frogs and toads. So last year was a hallmark year for participation in our program because, hey, what else are you going to do with your family? Let's go listen to frogs and toads. So it's really fun. A really cool program, and Sally Petrella, our monitoring manager, is just fabulous. So,
we will put a link to that event in the chat. Anna, boy, if I've ever heard an NPR story in the making, I'm Anna Marie Seisling out here with the frogs and toads, and then cue the natural sound and your microphone on the frog.
Exactly. You gotta be really quiet, because they'll hear you.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, I do want to remind our Facebook audience that you too can ask questions. Type them in the chat if you have any. But as you can see, Anna and I can quiz Marie all day about her work with the Friends of the Rouge. So Marie, you've talked a lot about projects that are underway. I want to ask you about kind of a forward-looking one. You mentioned earlier the Oxbow Project. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I think we have a rendering also that aerial photo, and then a rendering of what that's about, and what it's going to be.
So I'm happy to announce that the Oxbow is complete, and they did a ribbon cutting with all the project partners, and we were present, although we were not in charge of the project. That was a project that was ushered in through Wayne County, the Henry Ford, the Alliance of Rouge Communities, so many different funding sources. But they made the final cut and cut the ribbon in 2019. And Debbie Dingell was there I think Senator Stabenow was there to help cut the ribbon on that one. But the amazing part about this Oxbow is that it acts as like a hotel or a respite on the Sahara Desert that is the concrete channel. So you can see in that image the concrete channel, and maybe we'll get to talk about that in the future, but the concrete channel was put in the late 70s to help mitigate the flooding that was a result of the construction of the Fairlane Mall. And the Fairlane Mall, that location, was one of the last remaining giant wetlands in the area. So we were paving the wetland. Now we're creating this concrete channel in 4 miles of what used to be a 5.8 mile river. And so now, fast forward into the future, now we're spending more dollars to go ahead and fix that. Not only are we doing the Oxbow, which helps the fish as they're moving upstream towards the rest of the Rouge tributaries for habitat, for rest, for food, for breeding, all of that. And the ecological restoration that happened there is really helping spur economic redevelopment. It's helping to create a nicer quality of life for the people that live there, not just the habitat for the animals. And gosh, it's such a cool project to go in there, to paddle in there, and to see how quickly life wants to live. It rebounds. Before they started the Oxbow 20 plus years ago, there were 2 species of fish in that Oxbow, and they were deformed. And now you have over 60 species of fish that you can find in there.
Wow.
There's an incredible story of environmental revitalization. We have bald eagles nesting. I was just walking down there yesterday. I saw a kingfisher, blue herons, all different kinds of amazing wildlife that's returning because we're taking the time and we're investing in restoration projects that are just absolutely vital to our community here in Southeast Michigan.
Oh, that's so amazing and really touches me to hear these stories of nature's resilience. And you're so right that life does continue. So we do have a question coming from Karen Grade. Karen wants to know, how many species of amphibians do you have? I'm assuming maybe she means in the Rouge River along those wetlands. I know, Marie, you had said these are really, as far as biodiversity, really kind of rich environments. Any idea, though, of how many species of amphibians?
I am not the expert to answer that question. That's a great question, and I would love Sally Petrella, our monitoring manager, to answer that. I do know we have 8 species of frog and toad in our watershed, but I believe there's 14 across the state of Michigan. In terms of other types of amphibians, salamanders, etc., I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question.
Yeah, well, we can certainly get an answer to that, and we'll put it in the Facebook chat. So thank you for that question, Karen. We do kind of like when we stump ourselves in this watch party too, because it pushes us to learn more. So we'll get the answer and we'll put that in the chat as well. You can still ask questions in the chat, but I do want to show our virtual field trip on coastal wetlands, which may spur some questions and also provide answers about what is actually going on with some of the other kinds of critters. So let's go to that virtual field trip.
Compared to sandy beaches and giant sand dunes, this may not look like much, but don't be fooled. This habitat is one of the most important in the Great Lakes region. Oh, you don't believe me? Well, good thing we're taking a field trip. Before we get into why this habitat is so special, there are 2 important questions to ask. Number 1, what is a habitat anyway? And number 2, where is my guide? We'll break down question 1 while I go solve question 2. To put it simply, a habitat is a place where an organism or a community of organisms live. Some habitat types might be easy to spot, like a beach, which is technically the zone extending from the water's edge to the limit of the highest storm waves, or dunes, which stabilize and resupply beachfronts with sand while supporting a diversity of plants and wildlife all their own. But the Great Lakes region is vast, and there are hundreds of different coastal habitat types that are less known, but just as important. One of those can be found in the Metzger Marsh Wildlife Area, just east of Toledo, Ohio. I met with Matt Kovach there. He is a coastal program manager for the Nature Conservancy. He works as part of a team restoring wetlands on the edge of Lake Erie, and that means he knows this habitat as well as anyone. Matt, thanks so much for meeting with us. So could you explain to us what are some of the defining characteristics of the Great Lakes wetlands?
Sure. So Great Lakes wetlands are really, really important and special places. There really aren't many of them left. We've lost about 95% of our wetlands in the state of Ohio. They provide really, really important wildlife habitat for fish and birds and mammals and all sorts of things. You know, there's a lot of food there. There's a lot of habitat, a lot of homes for different types of animals that live out here. A lot of things that migrate, a lot of birds that migrate from south to north and north to south.
Can you show us some of your favorite parts?
Sure. Come out with me. I'll show you some of these cool places.
Let's go.
So these are the coastal wetlands that are on the southern shore of Lake Erie. Okay. And these are some of those habitats I told you about that are those really important coastal wetland habitats in the Great Lakes. So this is one of our really common wetland plants up here. It's called either American water lotus or yellow lotus. It's got a bunch of common names. Yeah. And it grows really well in, you know, about 3 foot of water. And we find it kind of fringing in a lot of those between the shallower areas of a lot of our marshes and the deeper areas that are kind of dominated by that, some of those submerged aquatic plants that we'd seen earlier. So this is a muskrat hut. This is one of the mammals that likes to live out in these areas. And what they do is they build their homes like this, build these mounds up, and they'll have a little compartment inside of there that they'll use as their, as their living room, and they'll stay in there all winter long.
Their living room. It's so complex. All those different things. And so what kind of things do you think from out here, or do you think are made up in this nice little nesting place?
So there's a lot of plants that they use to construct these. Most of it is cattail, and that's a plant that's growing right here next to you. Yep, exactly.
Oh, wow.
A lot of it is that. There's some smartweed growing on it too. Smartweed, and there's some other plants that they'll use. They'll use that combined with mud that they pull up from the bottom to basically build this whole structure. And if we could see inside of it, you'll see that it's kind of hollowed out. There's a big open area inside of there. Right. And there's actually an entrance right here on that side that they'll use to go inside.
So what about the cattail is so unique that they use so much of it? It's so significant.
They love cattail.
Right.
It's a food source. It's one of their favorite foods. And that's why if you look out here, all these dead sticks sticking up is basically cattail strands. If you look right over there, you can see one that's kind of been chewed up quite a bit. That's probably from the family muskrats that live right in here.
All right, so they're going out for dinner.
Exactly, that's one of their favorite foods.
Matt, thank you so much for showing us Metzger Marsh. It's beautiful out here. And I think we understand a little bit more why preserving habitats like this is so important. So thank you for being one of the people that helped to protect it. But that's the end of our field trip. I'm Morgan. Thank you so much for coming along with me. We'll see you next time, and we will be back.
Okay, good.
All right.
Man, I gotta love those virtual field trips. And for people who enjoyed that, there are 3 virtual field trips on greatlakesnow.org/education. And it seems like watching that maybe inspired some questions from some people viewing on Facebook right now. One question that came in is from Billy Plutt. Billy wants to know, has there been any green stormwater infrastructure projects built or in design for the area? Bioswales, rain gardens, anything like that? What do you think, Marie?
Oh, Billy, there's been so much work in Detroit and the metro region on developing a comprehensive green infrastructure. Friends with the Rouge alone, we do a number of different green infrastructure projects, rain garden plantings. We run a program in Detroit called the Rain Gardens to the Rescue with Sierra Club with funding through the Herb Family Foundation. We're a part of the Land and Waterworks Coalition that's led by Detroit Future City that does a lot of that work. Regionally, we've been partnering with the Huron River Watershed Council, the Clinton River Watershed Council, Friends of the Detroit River, and the River Raisin Watershed Council to create a social enterprise around green stormwater infrastructure services. And gosh, that's just scratching the surface. There's so much amazing green infrastructure work that's happening in this area. Yeah.
Marie, I wanted to ask you maybe a big sort of philosophical question. In seeing, it comes out of that idea of green infrastructure as well. What can you say about how the community's addressing green infrastructure, but then also back in history with the destruction of the wetlands? What does that sort of say about us, our priorities, or like how we sort of design the world that we're living in relation to the natural world?
I'm glad you asked that question, Sandra. And one of the things that I sort of think about in looking at the broader picture of Metro Detroit is there's this consistent, so in Wayne County, we have 90% of our wetlands have vanished, and that's continuing. So in the inner ring suburbs, you can see dead malls, open, vacant shopping centers, things like that. Yet there's still development happening in the outer rings of the suburbs, Canton, Northfield Township, as you kind of broaden out in that wide kind of circle. And it's the question of why aren't we redeveloping already developed lands and developing places that are still untouched? And it's because there's a value kind of there's an off balance of value, and it's cheaper to develop untouched land than it is to redevelop already paved surfaces. Just look at the Fairlane Mall I was talking about. That's essentially a dead mall. It's in bankruptcy. That's 8,400 parking spaces. And there's the Hyatt there. That's an 800-room hotel that's completely empty and will probably never resurrect itself once it's glory in the 70s and 80s. And the consequences of doing that is the removal of these huge wetlands that even if you do recreate them in the future, they're never going to be the same. You have thousands of years of ecological development that is just, paved over in an instant. And so it just kind of begs the question of how is our society really thinking about future plans and development, not just for an immediate economic gain, but for sort of long-term sustainability, not only for our immediate future, but for our children, our grandchildren. And, that's something that I wrestle with every day. And I look at my 5-year-old daughter and my 3-year-old son, and I think, what kind of future do I want for them?
Absolutely. And, I really appreciate you bringing up that kind of multi-generational approach. And my only hope really for us as a species is just that most of us, or more and more of us, will continue to kind of rise up and think about, it's not just my generation, it's not just me right now. What about 7 generations down the line? How can we be kind of the kind of stewards for our land and for our future ancestors, really. Marie, thank you so much for joining me and Sandra this afternoon. This was great. So next month we will continue this conversation about wetlands, and we'll visit Belle Isle specifically. And we'll have Amy Emmert, who is the Director of Education at the Belle Isle Conservancy. We're also going to do more with our new partnership with the International Institute for Sustainable Development. So follow along with us on Facebook to see more about all of that.
Yes, all of us will be posting links in our social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook. You can follow Great Lakes Now, you can follow WDET, and you can follow the Belle Isle Conservancy. And we'll put links up to our new partner as well, the International Institute for Sustainable Development. They've got some great resources about wetlands, so we'll put those in the chat if they're not there already.
On Facebook, you can follow WDET on Twitter, on Facebook, and thank you so much. And Marie McCormick, you are the Executive Director of Friends of the Rouge River. Thanks so much for being with us today. And if people want to learn more about your group's work and efforts, where can they go to find out more?
You can go find out more about our organization at www.therouge.org. And thank you so much for having us on your show today. It's been a true pleasure.
Yeah, thanks again for coming. I want to thank everybody behind the scenes who makes this possible. Mary Ogilvie at the Belle Isle Conservancy, Meta Stange at WDET, and our Colleen O'Donnell and Zach Allen, who are basically executive producing behind the scenes here as well, and our new partner, Sumit Bath from the International Institute for Sustainable Development. We will see you in our next watch party, or maybe you will catch Anna or me out on Belle Isle. And hopefully we'll all get to see some bald eagles. Thanks so much for joining us.